Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Amy McCoy. I'm the marketing manager over at Ongoing Operations, and thank you for joining this installment of Lattes and Learnings, Navigating Crisis and Essential Next Steps for Credit Unions. So today we have Tim Daugherty, who's our Director of Business Continuity Planning at Ongoing Operations, and Mark Zook, who's the President and CEO of MAPS Credit Union in Salem, Oregon. So this interview style webinar will discuss insights, perspectives, and best practices to help you manage through the business challenges of COVID-19. And there'll be open time for Q&A at the end of the webinar, but please feel free to go ahead and type in your questions as we're going through, and we can try to answer them throughout the webinar as well as at the end. And a recording of this will be sent out tomorrow for your reference if anyone's interested in that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim to kick us off.
Great, thank you, Amy. I appreciate that. And once again, welcome, Mark. Appreciate you joining us today. Have a little conversation here about how things are going right now as far as the COVID-19 or the pandemic is going. When the whole pandemic actually started here in the United States, it kind of started out your way. And then it eventually just started affecting a lot of businesses here in the U.S., across the U.S., and a lot of different businesses were not prepared with their business continuity planning as far as their pandemic plans, et cetera. And they were more in a reactionary mode, whereas people that were prepared, had plans in place, they were doing more of the incident response mode. So I guess before we really get down into some of the questions that I have for you, Mark, if you could just kind of give us an update of where things are up in your area, because different states and communities have different dates when they're opening, or some may already be open right now. So if you could just kind of give us a background of where you're at in MAPS is at as far as the standing and their status with the pandemic right now. We'll start there.
Sure. You're right. It's kind of started, in Seattle and in New York, and sort of spread from there. But Seattle, I think, was an initial hotspot. We're about 200 miles south of Seattle, so we're a bit of a distance from it. In Oregon, the governor was pretty quick to respond. So she took action pretty early on to move to stay-at-home orders. We had come back from the GAC actually in the middle of this and said, maybe we should look at that pandemic plan and see how appropriate that plan is for a real situation, given that it was really designed with best practices in mind, but not really understanding the nature of something as specific as COVID. So we started looking at that very early on, and then by the time mid-March came around, we sort of knew that what was going to happen, and she called the stay-at-home. Oregon has been slower for West Coast states. It's been slower to come out of its stay-at-home plan. I think on purpose. I think that was the governor's plan. We are now just sort of migrating through the first phase of a three-phase strategy or opening up strategy. The metro area that I live in, which is the Salem metro area, which is just south of Portland, Portland and Salem have the highest infection rates in the state. And so we're a little behind the rest of the state, honestly. And so we are midway through a phase one. For MAPS Credit Union, that means that we remain closed except for appointment only and drive-through, and some lending appointment admin is also sort of ongoing, but we remain pretty much closed beyond those.
Okay. Yeah, so like you said, you guys are kind of behind the opening, but I think for the most part, a lot of credit unions are looking and trying to figure out what are the trigger points as far as moving forward and starting to open up and have people come back into the office and getting back to what we want to, I guess, consider the new normal, as everybody's talking about. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is the difference and get your thoughts and insight on what's the difference between, and is there really any difference between the credit unions that are possibly already opening or open versus credit unions like that are in your situation that can't open, and the different types of impacts that you could possibly feel, not opening versus, being open, those sort of things. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about, and it's, top of mind for me, is are there really any financial concerns for the credit unions that are remaining closed and have to remain closed because of, stay-at-home orders, et cetera, what's going on. So are there concerns that you have? I know a lot of people were having concerns about shifting budget money around to be able to buy Purell and other things, but can you expand out on the any financial concerns that you may have?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm not sure that the ones who are slowly opening and the ones who haven't yet opened aren't all in the same situation, ultimately. Talking to sort of my CEO network here, I think we're all sort of in the same boat, whether we've actually gone to the new normal for being open or what. From an income perspective, from an ROA perspective, I think credit unions are going to run, at least we're modeling, 40% to 50% of normal. I've talked to quite a few credit unions that are sort of forecasting just be net neutral, even, try not to lose money this year. But we're compounded by several things going on. We're compounded by margin compression. We're compounded by loan loss, and boy, you want to talk about a really interesting conversation is try to prognosticate on where loan loss will be in the fourth quarter of 2020 or the first quarter of 2021. Right now I think things generally look okay for credit unions, but there's going to be this lingering effect that occurs when there isn't stimulus, when we've seen more layoffs, where there's a real genuine concern about what loan loss will look like. And then, of course, interchange income for us. So we have a very large debit card penetration in our marketplace. We've seen interchange income decrease pretty significantly. Now we expect that to come back as
Right.
the economy opens up. But you combine all of that with the fact that you have, well, in our instance, I'm not sure how large we were in asset size 2 months ago, maybe 880 million. We are 960 million today. Mm-hmm. So that with low ROA has the effect of compressing capital. So you now all of a sudden have capital issues combined with all of the other things. And I suspect that with the callers on the phone, I'm right with everyone else. They've all seen the same thing. So right. Those are big challenges. Sort of the migration to membership. If you look, keeping branches closed means you don't add new members because your online channels for new membership opening and account opening, they generally haven't been. Now, some are awesome, but I think generally the credit industry hasn't been great at rolling out those technologies particularly well. And so we've not seen any member growth. So keeping branches closed is probably suggesting, unless you're doing it through indirect and getting members that way, right, that you're lower membership counts.
Okay, so just discussing, talking about the membership, that kind of segues into my next question. How do you think that the membership is being impacted, and like the relationships? Because you know how credit unions are. We're all very member centric, and people walk in and it's almost like a family. So yeah. Are you considering and having any discussions about the possible effects or impacts that having the branches really closed and not providing that the service, the wide open service that everybody's normal or expected, previously? Now, are there possible, concerns with the member relationships kind of breaking down, or how are you guys seeing that and discussing that internally?
This is a constant conversation internally because what we do know, and you said it earlier, we always use the same phrase, which is the new normal, right? The reality is members had to transact financial business remotely through all of this, regardless of who you were going to. And so they've discovered new technologies that they perhaps had not been interested in using before, remote deposit capture or online opening or whatever it might be. They've found new ways of doing transactions that historically would have come into the branch for. So just fundamentally, there's a shift to digital. And that shift to digital means that credit unions, if your trajectory for sort of rolling out digital strategies was a 5-year trajectory, it may now be a 1 year. You know, you're going to have to adjust your ideology around how you're going to address this because the expectation just got larger for those kind of services. We saw really interesting things like part of your branch structure, whether we enjoy it or not, is for our older members, there's a socialization aspect.
Right.
And so in those branches that had higher, 50 plus, and since I'm over 50 now, I can say 50 plus with confidence, 50 plus folks would come in and they would engage in the personal aspects of that. What we saw when we moved to drive-thru was those folks needed perhaps socialization even more than they ever have because they're so isolated. They just started going through the drive-thru. They started doing small transactions and they would just fill up the drive-thru.
Oh my gosh.
So it would clog up our drive, essentially. So, so we know that our relationship with our members has changed. I don't know that we know exactly what the outcome of these changes will be 6 months from now, but we know the relationship is different.
Right. So, staying on that topic now, do you foresee, I'm not sure if MAPS had any plans for adding some new brick and mortar locations, or, is there going to be more considerations now where, okay, do we really want to add that brick and mortar, or, we still go to the digital side of life right now, since the older generation, like I'm in with you, that people are using the digital methods of banking now.
So you're hitting close to home on this one. If you were standing in my office right now, you'd look out across the parking lot at a new 30,000 square foot building we're building across the parking lot that we're midway through building. So there's no turning back at this point.
I did not Google anything, all right?
Yeah. You say to yourself, is this the wisest decision knowing what you know today? Having said that, part of the conversation internally, and I think it has to be a conversation with every credit union, is the idea of a remote workforce and what does that mean? And I've heard lots of comments in the industry about increased productivity. We sent everybody home and productivity went up. I think that happens for about 45 days. And then you have to figure out what direction and sort of what your accountability structure is around that. And do you really want all of your employees working from home? I think there's tons of questions around this that need to be answered. And so, our conclusion was we're probably still going to need the building.
Right.
We may not use it in the same way we used it before.
Okay, that you had planned on. So, so talking about now, as far as your staffing resources, is there going to be possible impacts to the staff not wanting to come back, or maybe they've found another job, or those sort of things? Are you having those sort of impacts right now, or your staffing levels are really remaining this level and the same?
We're more fully employed than we have been in a long time. I'll say. We did not, as most credit unions in our areas, some did actually do furloughing or laying off, but we did not. What we did was we reallocated all of those staff that were qualified, basically all the FSRs in branches, to the contact center. And so that worked really well for us, in times where we heard members talking about wait times at other financial institutions of over an hour. Our wait times were a minute, right? So that was actually a nice positive for the organization to see that kind of service and to actually get that reputation for having that service. Now, returning to opening branches means there's a balancing act with regard to those other services as you move people away from things like contact center and bring them back into branches. Right now, I don't foresee any changes in staffing. I think we're talking a lot internally about what that employee of the future looks like and how that employee engages with members in an increasingly digital environment. We're sort of we've stolen the phrase. It's a little bit hokey, but our concentration right now. We've done this whole repositioning strategy in the middle of the pandemic to say, what did we learn and where are we going? And we sort of have this stolen phrase that we're becoming bionic. So we're engaging increasingly in digital strategies, and we have to actually understand how to deliver member experience and member empathy and member engagement while also aligning our digital strategies sort of in a synchronous way with our human experience. And so that may change the way we look at employees in the future.
Definitely. So, but we're not going to be employing robots, getting bionic that way. So, taking a look at, you had said you're reevaluating, having discussions now about, what the future employee may look like and what their roles and responsibilities, job duties may be concerning. Now, taking a look at the possible next thing that could happen with this pandemic, a possible second wave coming through. What sort of ideas or things that are you and your group coming up with, your team coming up with, as far as, okay, here's our plans now? I know normally everybody's starting to try to unwind now from the plans that they put in place. Now we can unwind, but we have to be prepared and be kind of agile for this possible second wave that could be coming. So, if you could just share some ideas right now with the group, that'd be great.
You bet. Well, that repositioning strategy I talked about, we actually took that to the board and we said, here's what we learned, and here are changes to our business plan that we're going to need to change midway through this year. And so we have presented, and basically all it is we took some of the things off the table with regard to targets for year-end completion. We changed some of the things to speed up some of our strategies. So we're sort of putting that in place. The only way we can look at this is that there will be a second wave, and that we need to be prepared. So we're putting into place things like we're going to keep a rolling 6-month supply of masks and sanitizers and gloves and all of that. If there is no second wave, we sort of joke internally that we know what everybody's getting for Christmas. But we're sort of putting those safeguards in place to sort of get us through. We're also trying to about 70 to 90 people are coming in every day into facilities to work out of about 280. So pretty good numbers. One of our big questions, honestly, is not so much when we open the branches, but when we bring everybody else back.
Right.
And we've concluded that we do want to bring everyone else back probably by beginning of September, because we don't want to get into this phase where we're just continuing remote working all the way through the potential of a second wave. We're not interested in that. We want to get everybody back, get back to that normal, and then move forward. So, just building a little bit more of a robust foundational organization for the potential of another prolonged situation.
Right. Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to actually ask Amy here if we have any questions coming in from the group. We have a few minutes left here, and I wanted to try to get some of the questions possibly answered that people have.
Absolutely. Along with what Mark was just talking about, we had one question come in that asked, do you have any trigger points that you're monitoring to determine when you will reopen, when you will bring those other employees back?
So we have planned to, right now we are 5 days a week, 6 hours a day for appointments and drive up at all of our branches, except one branch that doesn't have drive up, and that branch is closed. Our plan is when the governor says that it's okay for us to move to phase 2, everything opens in sort of this new normal with, we've already secured all the plexiglass screens and everything else to prepare the organization, sort of the masking for the floor and spacing and all of that. We've prepared for all of that. We think it's June 15th, but we don't know. One of our counties, the infection rates are just not really going down particularly well. So of the 2 counties, since they share a metro area, we're likely to be stuck with both counties being denied for a second phase. We're hoping that's not the case, but I think she's going to want to see the numbers coming down a little bit. So we're trying to actually time everything with the governor's sort of mandates. And that's what we see from most credit unions, is they're sort of following that same trajectory here.
Great. And we have a few more questions here I'll read off, and also to anyone who's dialed in, please feel free to go ahead and type any you have at this time. So we have another one here that says, Mark, portfolio quality will also matter to business continuity. Many businesses are closed due to the pandemic. In this situation, how can we manage the portfolio quality? Can you share any ideas about it?
That's a great question. If I had the answer to that, here's what we are in this strange situation, and I'm not really sure whether this is typical or not. I haven't really been in any conversations on the commercial side. We have a huge pipeline, commercial lending pipeline right now. It's probably 50 or 60 million. For us, that's really big. And so one of the things we've done is we've tightened up some of the underwriting standards. We were a big, I can't say big. We committed 20 million to the PPP, and we funded almost 20 million. So we felt like we were not a preferred SBA lender, but we felt, our mission calls for us to serve our small businesses with that program. And so we did do that. Underwriting standards, like I said, we're tightening up those a bit. MAPS has never been a really big, we do not dig deep into credit risk. We are pretty much an AB paper lender to begin with. We are anticipating delinquency to basically double, which is not comfortable for us, but I don't think I have any great answers to that question right now. Unfortunately, it's something we're going to have to work through.
Thanks, Mark. So we've got another one here that you spoke about remote banking increases and a general shift to digital. What new were you prepared for that already at MAPS, or what new technologies are you looking at?
Can you say that one more time? You cut out on me a little bit.
Sorry about that. So you spoke about remote banking increases and a shift to digital. Were you already prepared for that at MAPS, or what new technologies are you looking at implementing?
Yeah, what we saw remote deposit capture, I think, triple in between the March numbers and the April numbers. Our remote deposit capture product is a decent product. We now are spending more time focusing on how to make that better. And it looks like those counts are sticking. So we want to make sure that we're providing a really good product there. We had a digital strategies roadmap as part of our 10-year vision. One of the things that was supposed to be done by year end was we had a very weak online account onboarding system. And we've rolled out some new technologies. We've run a new LOS and some other things to help us enhance that offering. We're sort of just behind the curve on it. I know lots do this better than we do. We actually repositioned all of our developers to getting that out, and they got that out mid-April, I would say. It's been 3 or 4 weeks ago. So what was supposed to be done basically at the end of the year got done in April by repositioning those. So what we're essentially doing is still following the same roadmap, just expediting sort of the key digital strategies that we sort of need just as baseline offerings, stuff that we weren't particularly, we felt like we had more time to do. And now we realize that we probably don't. So.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people would agree they're in the same boat. We had one last question come in here regarding remote workforces. Did you run into any security concerns when your workforce went remotely? And or if not, what was your biggest challenge that you faced or are facing?
We were fortunate in that our IT guys, we already had all of our developers were already remote workers. We employ folks. So we own 4 or 5 QSOs, and those QSOs are all over the United States. And so just the way we have serviced those subsidiaries and the way we service already our remote workforce, we were already pretty well versed. You know, the biggest security concern is Zoom, honestly. So we use Zoom. We have preferred Zoom generally, and so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out whether Zoom was going to be an appropriate fit for us because of the publicity. That was actually probably our single biggest security issue.
Awesome. So that is the last question that I've got in from the group. If there aren't any more coming in, that's that we can probably wrap there. I will just also say if anyone has any questions that come to them later, of course, feel free to reach out at info@ongoingoperations.com, and we can make sure we direct them either to Tim or to Mark. And but yeah, with that, I think that's the end of our questions. Tim, if you want to wrap up.
Sure. Yeah, I want to first thank Mark for joining us. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day, and also Amy for facilitating this for us here. But one of the biggest things is I want everybody to make sure is, you know, as we are moving back into our offices and everything, one of the main things that you want to make sure that you are protecting your people, you know, your staff, and making sure that they are comfortable about coming back into the office. We do, I think Kirk had written a blog about, you know, a little bit of a quick checklist to get into everybody's hands. So it just gives you some ideas to help when you start moving back in there. You know, there's certain things that you can do, and a lot of things, you know, people are already doing, but you know, we just want to make sure that everybody's safe, and then it's also keeping their families safe. So I have nothing else, and like I said, I appreciate everybody's time here. So you all have a wonderful day. Any questions, just send them over our way and we'll answer them for you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.